Morgan, you make a huge distinction between being rich and wealthy. Can you walk us through the difference and why it matters?
I think if you are rich, that by my definition, that means that you have the money in the bank you can buy the things that you want. You can make your mortgage payment, you can make your car payment, you can pay for your dinners out, whatever you want to do. That's rich. Wealthy is independent. It's money in the bank that you're not spending. It is money, it's things that you have not purchased. It's savings, it's investments that's sitting there, not being spent, but it's giving you independence. It's giving you financial independence and psychological independence, where you can live your life in your way without chasing what you think other people want out of you. And there's some pretty astounding examples of the two sides of the spectrum. I use this in the book, The Art of Spending Money. The Vanderbilt family was the richest family that the world had ever seen. Back in the 1800s, Cornelius Vanderbilt, if you adjust it for inflation, he had something like $500 billion was his net worth. And some of the other very wealthy families, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, did a pretty good job at giving most of their money away to charity. The Vanderbilts basically said, we're going to give it all to our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids, and their job is to live the biggest, most ostentatious life that you can possibly imagine. And the biographies that came from there of those Vanderbilt heirs would show, I think without exception, that every single one of them was miserable.
Hmm.
These are, if you were a Vanderbilt heir in the early 1900s, the day that you were born, you got $500 million trust fund. And the only thing that was ever expected out of you in life was that you spend as big as you possibly can. And every single one of them was miserable. There's a book called Fortune's Children, written by one of the heirs. His name is Arthur Vanderbilt. And he talks about the history of his ancestors. And it is one of the saddest books I've ever read, because these people are people who maybe you and I and people listening would look at and say, you're so lucky. I can't believe how lucky you got. You just got $1 billion the day you were born. And you read it and you say, like, I would never want that life, because they were very rich. They were the richest people in the world, but they had no independence. Everything was dictated about, even including who they were allowed to marry, was dictated by kind of the social circle of their family. And to me, the most interesting part of the Vanderbilt family is that by this point, today, virtually all the money is gone. There are a couple of Vanderbilt heirs that have some money, but the first Vanderbilt heir who got no inheritance, no trust fund, was Anderson Cooper, the CNN host, who I'm sure most people are familiar with. His mother, Gloria Vanderbilt, was kind of the last person to get a big trust fund. And Anderson Cooper has talked about this, that being the first Vanderbilt heir who didn't get much money was probably a good thing. He was the first person in his family in like 150 years who was told, you have to go figure it out for yourself. You have to build your own career, make your own money, figure out your own way. And he's talked about this, like he's probably the happiest person in his career. Not that he's had a perfect life, but he's probably one of the happiest. And I think that is, again, like if you look at the richest people, because the Vanderbilts were the richest people in the world and they had no wealth by my definition. They had no independence. They had no ability to live their own life. I think that's the difference between rich and wealthy.
It all comes back to, what are you actually using money for? And the clearer you are about the drivers for why you're doing it, it changes what and how you're doing it.
Yes. And it's so clear in my head, like, would you rather earn $70,000 a year and your kids admire you, you have a great marriage, you have barbecues with your friends and you sit and laugh and you're in good health? And would you rather have that life, or make $1 million a year and you're on your 5th divorce, your kids don't talk to you anymore, you're in terrible health, you're being sued by all of your business partners? When you frame it like that, it's the most obvious thing in the world. Like, would you rather have a good life and less money, or more money and a worse life? If you frame it like that, it's obvious. But still, even if you agree with that framing, it is so normal and natural to say, okay, but I'd still rather make $1 million a year. Like, the pull is still always there.
Well, because you think you're going to be the exception.
Everybody does.
Everybody does.
Right.
So if you're in your 20s and you're just getting started, you haven't been a big saver, you're just got your first job out of college, Morgan, what is your advice in terms of getting good with money?
A really simple tool that I came to this by realizing that most people's who are making financial mistakes and have a problem with money, it's not because of a lack of intelligence. It's ignorance. And for most people, they actually have no idea how much money they're making or spending. And if you ask them, like, how much money do you make per month? And how much money do you spend per month overall? Most people in that situation either couldn't tell you or they would give you an answer that's false. And I think the very basic, such boring advice that goes the longest is check your bank account balance every single day. It takes
Every single day?
every day, every day. It takes 10 seconds. It's not that hard. And just to give yourself some sense of how much money is coming in and how much is going out. Just be cognizant of it. I've never, not, people don't do this anymore, but back in a different generation, balancing your checkbook was always a big thing. Most people don't do it anymore. But I remember for my entire life, since I've been a teenager, I've never had any desire to, never need to do that because I know my bank account balance down to the dollar every day since I've been 16 or 17.
Yeah.
And I think just having that awareness of what's going in and what's going out, it's the most basic advice. But for people who are new and starting out, nothing goes further than that. It's not a lack of intelligence, it's ignorance. You just have to become aware of what you're spending and how much is coming in and how much is going out. That's the very first thing.
And what's the next thing?
The other thing is financial independence exists on a spectrum. It's not black and white. So most people would say, we talked about this earlier, why save $20? That doesn't seem like it's going to make any difference whatsoever. So I'm not even going to save. Every dollar that you save is a piece of your future that you own. Every dollar that you save is a little bit marginally more comfort that you're going to have if you get laid off, if you have a medical emergency, if your car breaks down. Every single dollar is getting you to that place. So if you view independence as black and white, either I'm filthy rich or there's no reason to do it, then I understand why you would say, why even save? When you view it as every dollar that I save is a piece of my future that I control, it's a night of sleep in the future that's going to be a little bit better. I think the desire to save becomes even more. And you don't feel like it's idle money, like you're saving money and it's just sitting there not being used. It can give you pleasure today, right now. And I think some of the best financial decisions I've ever made was what I didn't do. I almost bought a house in my early 20s that I wouldn't have been able to afford, that would have locked me down to a region of the country that I didn't want to stay in, that would have done all kinds of things that in hindsight would have been terrible. And the freedom, the independence that I had by renting earlier in my life of getting up and going, moving to where the jobs were, I look back at that in hindsight as being an absolutely wonderful thing.
Well, as I listen to you, what I'm realizing, it's also a matter of expectations.
Yeah.
If you expected to be able to afford a house in your late 20s or early 30s, then of course you're going to think you failed.
Right.
But if you shift your expectations and say to yourself, if I'm patient, markets go up and down, inflation goes up and down,
Yeah.
mortgage rates go up and down. If I am patient, I will be able to figure this out. And when the timing is right and when I can afford it, I will find the right house for me.
Yes.
And that's the way that you manage the stress that you feel right now, because it's your expectation based on what society's telling you or your
Right.
parents are telling you that is making you miserable around the topic. One of the other big lessons of your work is the importance of mastering saving money. And I had always made the mistake of thinking about making more money. I got to make more money in order to have more money. And you really switched my thinking to focus on saving. Can you talk about why saving is so important versus the obsession with making more?
Well, so much is just what you need to be happy and content. And for someone, I've always felt like my level of savings, since I don't need that much to be happy. My wife and I live a good life, but not a very materially flashy life. So we don't need that much to kind of check the boxes in our life. And so I feel like that can be a superpower for your savings. If you need $10,000 to be happy, but I only need $1,000 to be happy, like I'm getting way more out of that savings than you might. And so once you realize that gap between expectations and reality is like like supercharging your savings, then it has a totally different feel. And so this was especially true when I was younger, where saving $100 or $1,000, that made an extraordinary difference in my life. I think the wealthiest I've ever felt was when I had $5,000 in the bank. And I remember just feeling like it was such an unfathomable amount of money at that phase in my life. And I look back at it now, where that's a less meaningful amount of money to me now than it was back then. But I look back at it now, I'm like, yeah, but I was like, I thought it was more extraordinary back then. And isn't that kind of sad that like that made me feel so rich? I remember waking when I had $5,000 and just being like, I can't even fathom how much this is. And now I don't get that feeling with that kind of money. And isn't that kind of sad? That's what happens when your expectations kind of spiral up. So the idea that the power of your savings is completely dependent on the expectations of what you have and the lifestyle that you want to live, I think is a pretty powerful idea.
How do you switch the focus, though, from this obsession of making more to understanding the importance of saving?
I've always viewed it as, again, back to independence. And if you are earning a high salary, but you need that money
Mm.
to pay your bills this year, you have no independence whatsoever. But if you have lower expectations and a lower level of life, still a good life, not a completely frugal life, a good life, and your savings can cover some portion of that, that's going to give you a better sense of contentment in there. And so, look, I want to earn more money. I want to earn more money this year than I did last year. I want to earn more money next year. I have that as well. I think ambition is a wonderful thing. But I also have a level of savings that would tell me that if I did not earn more money next year, even if my income collapsed next year, I'd be okay. And particularly at this phase of my life with kids, nothing matters more than me to that. If my career collapsed next year, we'd still have our house. We'd still have this level of savings that I've been saving for 25 years, having the savings built up to which we're going to be okay. Because income can be much more fickle than savings. Most people over the course of their life, what are the odds that you will get laid off at some point in your life? Very high.
Guaranteed, I
Very
think. Like,
almost
honestly.
100% that at
Yes.
some point in your life, your income is going to fall to zero. It might be for a week, it might be for a year, it might be for, who knows how long it's going to last, but it will happen to you. So income is much more fickle than savings.
Mm.
And when that happens to you, and it will, or maybe it already has, the savings that you've built up in the previous years is going to be the most valuable thing that you've ever imagined.
Morgan, what do you recommend we do every time we get a paycheck or get paid?
I view savings as an expense, just as I would view rent or food and whatnot. Now, obviously, it is more subjective. You don't have to save in the sense that you have to buy food. But once you view savings as a nice to have, it's almost unavoidable that you're gonna avoid doing it. Once you view it as I don't need to do this, you're gonna view it as I shouldn't do it then.
So, how do I think about it if I think about it as an expense?
I think about savings as the most valuable portion of my financial life. I think the idea that life is more fragile than we want to admit. Careers are more fragile than we want to admit. The economy and geopolitics are more fragile than we want to admit is why you should save. If we all lived in a world where we knew exactly what our income and expenses would be in the future, this would all be very easy. But we don't. It's a constant chain of unknowns and surprises in your personal life and throughout the broader country, the broader world. And that's why savings is mandatory. And I think everyone has a desire, has an obligation to manage their health. You have to manage your health. You can't just put it off. It's going to affect you whether you like it or not. I think money falls in that bucket or two as well. Even if you don't have any desire to learn about money or finances, you have an obligation to learn about it and to respect it because it's going to impact your life whether you like it or not.
Here's one way that I have started treating savings like an expense. Use the 10% rule. No matter what you're getting paid, save 10%. So if you're working a restaurant shift and you get 50 bucks in tips, save $5. That's the 10% rule. If you watch somebody's dogs this weekend and somebody's paying you 100 bucks to watch the dogs over the weekend, save $10. That's the 10% rule. And that's how you can make savings a habit, no matter how little or how much you make.
Anything is exponentially better than nothing. And I meet people, I remember when I was younger, when I was a teenager, saving $5, saving 10. I remember transferring $15 from my checking account to my savings account. And that might seem completely worthless to people, but it made sense to me back then of like, that's a meal in my future that I have now that I didn't have before. It's like anything is better than nothing is the most important rule of thumb.
Is there a simple and effective way to make saving money a habit?
Anytime in finance that you can automate it as well.
Okay.
So automating your bank and say every paycheck, you're going to move $50 to savings, whatever it might be, and making it automatic. The more that you can take behavior out of the system, because we're all flawed. We're all emotional. We're all biased. We've all got social pressures. I do, you do, everybody does. The more that you can take emotion out and put automation in, the better you're going to do over time.
And for the person who's still thinking, I mean, what's the point? I can barely pay my bills. What do you want them to know?
The first thing I want you to know is I feel you. I empathize with you. I don't judge you. I'm sure you're a good person and you should not be embarrassed about it because there are tens or hundreds of millions of other people in your shoes. So knowing that you're not alone, I think is an empowering thing for most people because a lot of people look at their lack of savings, look at their poor financial skills, and they feel guilt, shame, and embarrassment.
Hmm.
And you shouldn't. This is a very, very common thing. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. But the second thing you should know is that it is in your control. I use this in The Psychology of Money. It's an astounding story. There's a guy named Ronald Reed. Ronald Reed came from the most humble, if not impoverished background that you can imagine. And even as an adult, he spent his entire career as a janitor and a gas station attendant. And when he died, he left millions of dollars to charity. And everyone was like, where the janitor has millions of dollars? Like, what in the world happened here? And the answer was he saved what little he could, $10 here, $20 there, maybe $100 here. He invested in the stock market. He left it alone for like 70 years. And that's it. That's the whole story. And that's all you need. If you have the right behavior, if you have the right mindset, you don't need much else to even achieve extraordinary returns over time.